once again. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in on this Tuesday, Wednesday in Japan. I'm Mike Scala. This is Nuance, joined as always by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip hop MC in the chair of BLM Tokyo. What's going on, Timid?
What's going on?
Tired. What's just going on? Only got like an hour and a half of sleep, but working, busy. Can't wait to relax a bit.
You're not a sleep guy much anyway.
I had to sleep at some point. But we have a very special guest with us this week. We've got PJ Marcel, live from the car, Howard Beach Dad's Own. What's going on, PJ?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be here tonight.
Absolutely. Great to have you. And, we're live on Facebook. We are inspired by your Facebook lives all the time, letting us know what's happening in Howard Beach, as you call it, situational awareness. Whenever there's something we need to be aware about, you let us know. So we appreciate everything that you do. Thanks,
brother. Thank you.
Try not to crash. Pay attention to the road.
I'm good. I'm parking right now. I'm done. That's it. I'm parking. I'm parking where I'm done. I'm good.
There you go. So I know, PJ, you're on a tight schedule, so we wanted to talk about what you're up to in Howard Beach and what you're working on. And in particular, I wanted to bring up the Lemonade Day event. I know you were posting about it, and it was a big thing for the kids in the area. I really appreciate that. I think it's a great thing. It fosters the entrepreneurial spirit, and it's just a great way to support people doing things in the community. So, why don't you tell us about that? And you said you had ideas for it going forward?
What was the last line you said?
You said you had ideas to expand it going forward?
Oh, yeah. So thanks for following. Thanks for being a member of a very informative page, Howard Beach Dads. It's on Facebook. It's a community-driven group for those that are watching this podcast that resides in New York City. I'm actually a resident of Queens, and the community I live in is Howard Beach. So there was a big page that was run by the moms, and the dads came up behind them, and now we pretty much have the ear of the community. We're very involved. We like to put together events that are kid community wellness driven. We had an inspirational event that you're talking about, Mike, that just passed. Was the lemonade stand route. There was a gentleman by the name of Joe Caruana with Tony Modica from the Pizza Dance Foundation, Prima Pasta on Cross Bay, that put together a seminar for children in the community to come by and learn how to operate a lemonade stand. I jumped on board and said, hey, we have done, on behalf of the Howard Beach Dads, the successful Halloween route where families were able to drive around during COVID and before COVID in their vehicles to visit all the homes decorated. We did the Christmas light fight in Howard Beach. It was seen on every news publication and media outlet that's surrounding the neighborhood, as well as nationally televised. And I said, guys, let's do this lemonade stand route. We'll get the kids involved. And it was tremendous. We had about, I'd like to say total about 10 stands between the short amount of time, which National Lemonade Stand Week is August 20th and 21st this year in 2022. And all the kids participated, setting up lemonade stands, selling their items, which would have been baked goods, drinks, or prepackaged candies to visiting residents in the neighborhood.
Wow, excellent. Yeah, no, I always like events like that. But how can we make it even bigger? You said you wanted to do something to expand on it in the future?
Absolutely. So I have just as much energy as Mike, you do. Maybe I wish I could have as much energy as you do, because you're just so driven with positivity and eagerness to help. So I try to jump in where I can. How could I make it bigger? If I have more time and I have more the ability to advertise, which on social media, thankfully, I feel I'm very well received. I operate on multiple platforms and pages with my following, my respectful peers and my neighbors that utilize our platform as the Howard Beach Dads to keep situationally aware of everything going on. How I want to go bigger, as you asked, for next year, is I would like to get more children and more families involved, get more notification out early, as well as reach out to the media, because after the events passed and we sent pictures and video, they all wanted to be on board.
Right. They always say, oh, I wish I knew about this. Oh, you should have told me. And And they say, well, we posted about it, but yeah, so I agree. Start earlier, make it bigger. I think it will grow. You know, an event like this, it's awesome to do it once, and then every time we just keep building on it. Look what they did in Woodhaven. I don't know if you saw the Great Woodhaven Yard Sale. Kind of similar in a sense, where they got different homes around the neighborhood to participate. You know, started off a little bit smaller, and it got into this big thing, which really became a destination event for the neighborhood. That would be great for Howard Beach, for people in surrounding areas to come in and, you know, pour some money into the local economy and support the children. And it's just a great fun event for families and everyone to take part in.
Yeah. And we're already started with the fall festival route. We are jumping on board with the Kiwanis to help the Howard Beach Kiwanis with their publicizing of the Howard Beach Cross Bay Boulevard Halloween Parade, which has been running over 34 years. I jumped on board with my media ability to help publicize events. And last year it rained up until the 5 minutes before the kickoff. And we had a good 300 people show up. I made sure to push my publication as hard as I could to help them, because older folks, the older generation, they have the ability to get things done. And they have the ability in the drive with their connections, being that they're so well implemented in the society. They have connections to businesses. They have connections to real estate. They have connections to locations with real estate. That's what I was aiming with. And people, somebody like myself that knows how to market on Facebook, I'm able to reach these people in real time, especially with the live videos, as you said earlier, with the Howard Beach Dads page, which was a tremendous way to get information directly to the source. We have a page now that has 7,300 active members. When you do a live video on a private page, the entire membership gets a notification. So when something that occurs in the neighborhood is such a dangerous situation that would divert accidents around the community into other places, you wonder, why do I hear so many police cars and emergency vehicles and sirens? What's going on? During COVID, when nobody was giving the community information in real time, when people were scared, while I would like to say Brooklyn was being televised burning police cars and not police standing down while they marched the streets, our community was left unknown if what was going to happen. We were bordering Brooklyn. What were they going to do if rioters came down? And the platform that I helped build was running out to these incidents, being a 9/11 first responder, being a 911 first responder in EMS. I'd go to the scene, whatever it was, at a safe distance, put my camera on, face it to my face, with whatever was transpiring behind us, and broadcast the event so people could feel a little more calm of what was going on. That built the following, and that's what builds these events to be great.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Those and you know what you were just describing there, we've seen a good rise of, at least in the past 10 years, like kind of a citizen journalist type of thing, letting people know from the ground, because you know certain things are overlooked and certain things still need to be publicized. So you know I think it's a valuable service too.
Absolutely. And that's what gets attention sometimes on a neighborhood that's necessary then to get the political or the systemic change that we're looking for. Because like PJ said, oftentimes an area like Howard Beach might go unnoticed or not covered. Maybe there's more sensationalist coverage in a different area, maybe in Brooklyn, something happening. And then our needs in Howard Beach might go unmet because people don't know about it, or there's just not enough noise being made about it. So someone like PJ showing it, broadcasting it to everyone, and then allowing people to repeat the message and share it and talk about it and make noise on it, now it becomes an issue that people in power, let's say, have to pay attention to, whether that's politicians or the media, whoever has that platform to affect change.
So, Mike, we know each other for a very long time, and some people can misuse the authoritative position they have now, such as social media platform. I know there are communities that there are people that identify themselves as leaders, and they do the wrong things with their connections and resources. I know other areas outside of Queens that I see publicizing events using this tool of social media against the police department and against politicians, where we need to inform them and instruct them of what's going on as neighborhood community residents, as people that have an interest and investment in the community. I live in Howard Beach. I feel honored that I was able to excel on the platform of the Howard Beach Dads page, and also contribute to other very large social media pages with information in real time when it's upon me. I like to not only just bring emergency events, which, as you said, it gets a lot of attention. When you see in a live video of an area that you live in and there's a car upside down in the street and you want to know what's going on because you're seeing it and you want to tune in live, and you're able to use this platform of social media to not only give the information but receive it at the same time. People could talk and put messages up while I'm doing lives, ask questions, and I've evolved with just that point of giving the social environment of what's going on, also to put attention to situational awareness for certain things that occur around the community with construction builds. Mike, I think you commented on the delinators that were built on 156th Avenue by Stop and Shop. Whoever designed that, whoever was involved, they really need to revisit and say, all right, we made a mistake. This was an issue. We thought it was going to work, and it's not working. Right. But unfortunately, things take time. The data that's been collected from multiple sources, as well as myself, with giving live video showing vehicles where these delinators, if I'm saying the word correctly, excuse me, that were put up by an entrance exit to a major food store, are now becoming a serious traffic infraction, creating a dangerous condition with vehicles that can no longer exit and enter the property from one or another direction, to making U-turns in the street, going the opposite direction of travel, head on into oncoming traffic, etc. So it's been a very wild ride.
But PJ, that's a perfect example of really what we're talking about. You're shining a light on an issue like that. You're really showing the danger of it and just kind of bringing attention to it in a way now that allows other people to repeat it and to talk about it more, and just calls more attention to it, makes it an issue, whereas it could have been safely ignored otherwise. If we were to have any chance of changing something like that, you have to put that spotlight on it. You have to have that attention on it. And if it's not on TV, then you could use a social media platform to do it, like Jay said, the independent journalist, so to speak. But it's needed, it's necessary, because that's really the only way we see change, especially at the local level like this.
Yeah, exactly. Jay stated the citizen journalism. I actually had my press pass at one time in my life. I actually did cover certain stories to bring to publication, and with the social media experience I have running public events. Actually, if I can insert, today we actually just announced the 9/11 Memorial Parade, which is the biggest 9/11 motorcycle ride, honoring 9/11 heroes that were taken that day and dying from 9/11 related issues, medical issues. We just got clearance today for an event that closes Manhattan. So to circumvent these incidents and occurrences onto social media, be able to give the data in real time, show what the issue is in a respectful manner. My approach has always been respectful. Mike, you know me on camera and off camera. I'm the same dude. I'm humble. I'm very likable. I'll come up to you and I'll smile and I'll talk and I'll engage in a conversation, and I'll tell you if I'm wrong or I don't understand. So these things, they need to be looked at a little more closely. As time evolves and evolution evolves, I feel that you'll see more citizen journalism being respected and appreciated as the information is published.
Absolutely. And speaking of 9/11 first responders, I just read that you now have until Sunday to make a claim for workers' comp if you were at 9/11, whether or not you have the symptoms yet. I think that was extended. It was supposed to expire in 2010 originally.
Yeah.
Now there's a bill that would extend it, I think, to 2026 that the governor hasn't signed yet. But as of now, Sunday is the deadline.
Yeah. I luckily I was young, very young when I responded down there. I was 21 years old.
Mhm.
I was a volunteer auxiliary police officer. I happened to leave the command I was with before the incident occurred of 9/11 because I wanted to go into volunteer fire. When the towers were struck, I actually went there at the end of the day of my work after we closed, working in the hospital. I actually drove down to the site and I tore through the rubble. I was there for a couple of days, and I can promise you that I will never forget.
No, neither will anyone. And we thank you for your service in doing that, PJ. So seriously, that's something that we're all proud of and appreciative of, that you were there doing your duty for all of us.
Yeah, there's not a lot of us left, and the evolution of the volunteerism and volunteer sectors of the world, it's slowly coming to a close because people are very they're very limited with time. You have to work 2 jobs to survive in the New York City. I could imagine what it's like in other parts of the world, especially with the situational crisis that we're having financially in the world, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, well, PJ, we know you got to go. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us this evening, and we thank you for everything you do. And I hope we can follow up offline on some of these events. Let's make them even bigger and better going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you very much for having me on here,
Go,
both of you.
Where can they get information on your on the event? The lemonade stands and all that. And
Howard
All
Beach
right,
Dads, right?
anybody that's watching, you're welcome to join the Howard Beach Dads Facebook group. Any of our large scale rides, you could visit our Facebook page, 9/11 Memorial Ride, 9/11 Memorial Ride, and you can get all the update and current information on there. I'd love to come back with you guys soon, please. I'd love to sit and talk, or just sit and listen while you guys chit chat it up about current events and world news.
Excellent. Thank you, PJ. We do hope to have you back, and we'll catch you another time. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Be well.
Goodbye.
Events like that, actions and projects like that in the community level are really important and really great things, especially when they involve the kids. I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And back in 2012, we were involved in, I'm not, but we participated in Lemonade Day in Jamaica, Queens, I think it was.
Right.
And we actually went to, I think, one of the trainings that they did for the kids, if I'm not mistaken, the Sean Bell Center.
It was at the Sean Bell Center we went through, right? And it was it still goes on. So I was curious. I was wondering if what he's doing is somehow connected to that, or if he even knows about it, because this is a national organization that does Lemonade Day every year, and they did do it recently. Might be something to connect with.
It might be, or it could be different organizations. Excuse me.
Right.
Both involved in that same, because he said it was National Lemonade Week, right?
Right. And see, that's, lemonade stands is kind of an American traditional type of thing. It goes back to, I don't know when it started, but it's always this thing you'd see in old TV shows and whatnot. Kids have a lemonade stand, and it teaches, entrepreneurship. It teaches actions. It teaches lots of things. And it's just a good thing.
Right. And also from the adult's perspective, I think it makes people happy. It puts smiles on people's faces. Everyone wants to support. You can't pass a lemonade stand and not buy the lemonade, right? It's, it's just a good thing all around for everybody. It's a feel-good experience.
We had a lot of lemonade that day.
We did. PJ actually just sent me the flyer, I guess. Let me see if I can pull this up on my phone.
It was good.
For the 9/11 ride. So if anyone's interested in that, it's going to start at Flushing Meadows, Corona Park, the Boathouse, and at Indian Larry Motorcycles, 70 North 15th Street in Brooklyn. And it's going to be on September 17th. So if we can't really see that because of the glare.
Yeah.
We could,
is it the 9/11 Memorial Ride?
9/11 Memorial Ride. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a motorcycle ride. So check that out.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely have to have him back on and talk a little bit more.
Yeah, no, for sure. And PJ does great things in the community. Obviously as a first responder, he's got that history that we're all appreciative of, but with Howard Beach Dads also, it is that independent or citizen journalism that he brings that, we always look forward to it. And when we see PJ live in the group, we know he's going to inform us of something happening in the area that we all want to know about.
And maybe he can get us to hook up on some lemonade.
Never hurts. But he was talking about the economy and how people are struggling, sometimes working two jobs to stay afloat. And there was a story that came out about someone, I guess, who felt peer pressure to socialize at one of their jobs and resign. Now, did they think they were going to be fired and just resign preemptively? Or what was the deal here?
Well, it was a woman went on, it was on social media, and she was saying that she kind of felt pressured to participate in after hours, drink sessions and hanging out with coworkers and stuff by her higher up, saying that, you should socialize more and whatnot. And she kind of felt it was like an ultimatum. And, a lot of people chimed in on this same type of thing. They're like, I'm paid to be here for work. After hours is not part of my job. I come in, do my job, and then leave. And she was saying that, she kind of feels like they gave her an ultimatum, saying that if she didn't put in more effort in socializing, into being a team player, that she would get fired.
Okay.
And so
what kind of job was this? Do you know?
I'm not sure what kind of job she was in. But see if this was an article that came up recently that not sure what job position, but
I think that would be relevant to a certain degree, wouldn't it? I mean, especially if it's an hourly job. I mean, does she get paid by the hour? Does she get paid a salary? Is she in a leadership position? Because I can see if it's more, just entry level, you're paid by the hour. You could say, listen, I'm clocked in, I'm clocked out. You don't pay me to do extracurricular activities, but maybe somehow the job is more connected to that team building. Now, there's still going to be an argument, I think, getting very lawyerly, I guess, on this. There's still going to be an argument to make that could still happen during work hours, but we live in such a different time now. I mean, we're moving away, I think, from the traditional hourly work model. It's more of a gig economy. It's more of an entrepreneurial economy. People are looked at in terms of what do they bring to the table? What is the work? What is their output? More than just when do they start? When do they stop? And so do we ever really clock out in today's world?
Right. But I agree with some of the commenters that's saying, look, it's not after hours work that I'm not getting paid for. You can't, it's not part of my job.
I agree with that as a general principle, but it's always an interesting thing. Like, to me, it does depend on the job, because there are certain jobs that do require you, for instance, to be there at a certain time, because you have to maybe provide customer service. You can't leave a phone unanswered. The phones can be done mobilely now too, but whatever the case may be, maybe it's a server and you have to be able to man those tables or whatnot. Certain jobs do require you to be there from this time to that time, whereas other jobs are more, it's about the work, and you could do the work anywhere now. Everything is mobile. Technology is available to everyone. So for me as a lawyer, for example, I could work any time of the day, and believe me, I do, right? I'm up all night working on these things. So am I ever really clocked out? I mean, socializing might be part of that job to a certain degree also. Politics, certainly no exception to that.
Right, but those are, you're doing your own thing though. And you do, you have billable hours, so to speak. So you can even claim all of that time on as work. Like for someone working in a regular 9 to 5 or employed by a company or something, going to happy hour with coworkers for 2 to 3 hours after you've already done an 8-hour day and not getting paid for it. I think it's a very different.
I get it. And that's why I say it does depend on the type of job. But even in a case like mine, let's say I was doing a flat fee for someone, or I was on a contingency. So let's say for whatever reason, I'm not doing hourly on a certain case. I might still have to go to a bar or a restaurant, at some point, meet with people at all times of night. Maybe something comes up at 11 o'clock at night. Maybe it's some kind of social gathering with the client. Maybe, what if I have a client that's a company and I've got to do something as a team building exercise at 10 o'clock at night. I'm just saying hours now aren't 9 to 5 for everyone. And I think that's increasingly true in today's world post-COVID, right? We went to remote work and staying that way in many cases. And so I do think you do have more of a gray area here.
Yeah, but I think there needs to be limits and boundaries, because there is that separation. Because if it were the other way around, that the job's not going to just give up free time for you, free pay for you to do things on your own time, versus if they want you to do things on their time for free. And I know
what if you're on a salary? What if it's not a matter of your time versus their time? What if
with all your time?
But what if you're just looked at as a part of this team? And so when there's work to do, you do the work. When there's not work to do, you could do your own thing. And you just have to manage your own schedule, manage your time.
Right. But if it's a company and you're employed to do a job for these hours, that's
for those hours. But my question is, could the socialization be considered part of the job? And let's say you're not paid for the hours. It's not like a 9 to 5 job. It's just, this is one thing that we want our people to do to show that they're part of the team.
Yeah, I would say that to me, I would say that no, you need to pay for that. You need to pay me for that time. Now, if it's something I want to do, that's completely different. If they're coworkers that I get along with and I want to go hang out with, then that's completely different.
But if you're on salary, you're not paid for your time, right?
I'm sorry?
If you're on salary, you're not paid for your time unless you're given a schedule. Unless they're like, you work every day from 9 to 5 and work ends at 5 or what have you. But if you're not being paid an hourly rate, then what is your time? I mean, because you're still being paid when you sleep and when you don't work, because you get the same amount of money regardless, right?
You're paid to be there during a certain time. And I guess then there are different jobs that might require some other things. Like I would imagine publicists and PR work, that's not going to be specific 9 to 5. Like sometimes you get a contact that's going to be after. And sometimes in there's no salaried work, there's no overtime. But I think there needs to be boundaries, because otherwise, you're just on all the time, or the compensation for the job, for that access needs to be increased or needs to be, put in. Right.
I mean, I do agree as a matter of principle. I'm just thinking that in society, the lines are increasingly blurring.
Yeah.
And I've always been a proponent of the results-oriented work model, even dating back way before COVID, where I thought people really shouldn't be paid for just showing up and being at work at a certain time or between certain times. I think, and again, it is dependent on the particular job, but in general, and where it is appropriate, I think a better model is to hire people to do the work and evaluate their performance based on not how long they're sitting at their desk, but on the output and the productivity. And I think actually productivity will increase in a company if you give your employees and your people that you're working with more freedom, more flexibility to do the job, because then they're doing it on their terms. And again, boundaries are important and you have to figure out what's appropriate for your particular company and your employees and everything. But I think that if you treat people with more respect, like adults, they're going to give you a better product, better result. I mean, they're going to be happier, they're going to be healthier, they can be able to take care of their other priorities. They're going to know what works best for them in terms of time. Maybe some employees do a great job at 6 a.m. or even earlier when everyone else in the house is still sleeping. Maybe some like staying up late and doing it then. Whatever the case may be, they're in charge of their own destiny, so to speak, and they know what works and what doesn't work for them and how they can deliver you the best result as the employer. So I do think that that's the best model to have and to strive for where it is appropriate, but it absolutely depends on the type of job it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually something they have trouble with out in Japan. See, in Japan, that sort of after work mixing with coworkers is kind of expected. It's not really in the traditional type of Japanese company, it's kind of expected. So you would get what they call a salary man, which is someone who goes and does his 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 or whatever, and they go to work. And then after, they're expected to go for drinks with coworkers. And that could be several hours. Or there may be a business meeting outside and they're expected to go drink with the client. And so there's an issue here with the work-life balance, to where you've got these primarily, office workers that are worked at 9 to 5, and then they go for, several hours, and usually out drinking until the last train, and then they do it again. So they don't have time for life outside of work or their families and whatnot. And that's kind of an issue that they're dealing with here. But it's also part of the culture where it's an expectation. If you don't do it, you're looked at as not a loyal worker, or
Right.
Someone that's not part of
Company
the
man,
team.
company woman. Absolutely.
Right. And then they encroaches on parts of your life, to where they'll just transfer you to different parts of the country. It's very common here where the family might live in one city, and typically the husband is living in a different part of the country, and they're moving him around every two or 3 years just because. And if you don't do it, or you complain about it, it's seen as you're not a team player. Now the younger
Right.
generation is fighting against it. They're like, none of this makes sense. We don't have time for work-life balance, for families, and this and that. And as such, a lot of things are suffering in Japan in regards to that lowest birth rate, less people having families and such.
Yeah, and in today's world, actually, people might not have that time to socialize outside work. Maybe they have a second job to get to. They handle their business. They're a side hustle. Everyone has a side hustle.
Right.
People got to take care of business. You know what I mean? And you only have a certain amount of time that people are, we have more flexibility now, but we're also somehow on tighter schedules because we just have so much more to do, especially in a place like New York City and obviously Tokyo, very high cost of living, right? I mean, a lot of places in the world now have this problem where just your quote unquote regular job that maybe 50 years ago would have been good enough to buy a house for your whole family doesn't get you by anymore.
Right. And that, I think, and that is an issue in and of itself, because those wages should have kept pace with cost of living. And so where it would be where one job can handle it, because I mean, that's how it was. It's just, we got companies making record profits and all this and that, and workers are still, like you said, sometimes requiring 2 jobs, or even other things, or even just being constantly on call and being, now if you're making, again, like you said, it depends on the job. If you're in a position and it's a, I don't know, 250, 300K job, and you're in a management position that requires the salary, you can kind of understand if they're like, okay, we might need you for a few hours here and this and that kind of, but that should also be laid out up front when you take the job too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They should be very clear on that. And I'm always seeing on social media people saying how their boss texts them on a weekend or when it's their day off or after hours saying, hey, we need you to cover a shift tomorrow or today, or kind of drop everything and come in now. And it becomes a whole big thing. Sometimes they'll engage with the conversation, they'll text back, today's my day off, I'm with my fiance, I'm with my family, whatever it is, I'm going on vacation, my bag's already packed. And the boss is like, nope, we need you to cover this shift. If you don't come in, even though you're supposed a day off, you're fired. I see that happen a lot. That's always kind of shocking to me, honestly, because number one, I'm not used to that culture where a boss texts you. I mean, I guess I've been pretty independent for many years now, to the point where I never dealt with being employed and having a boss texting me to come into work at certain times. To me, that's crazy that people would even respond via text to their boss. I mean, if it's my mentality is, this is my day off, I'm not answering my phone for anyone, much less a boss is going to try to rope me into coming in. But then you get those accusations about not being a team player. Hey, someone couldn't make it, how come you're not covering for them? And New York and many other places has what's called an at-will employment. So really they can fire you for any reason. They can't do it for discriminatory reasons, and there are certain reasons they can't fire you for, but in general, they can say you're just not a good fit for this company anymore, we're moving in a different direction. And that could be a reason why.
Right. And Lixa says, by New York state law, you're not required to pick up your phone on your day off. And you shouldn't be. I don't think it should be. And I think in Europe, it's very, I think Deliverance said they work for a German company. They don't overstep. See, worker laws in that regard, I think, are more in favor of the worker in Europe.
In Europe, absolutely. In Western Europe, are you kidding me? Absolutely, right? Look at all the vacation time they give employees. And people in Europe are shocked to hear that we don't have these benefits guaranteed by federal law in the US and even in most of our states. But look at France. I believe France made it illegal for employers in most cases to contact employees after work hours. You can't even email an employee and say, I need you to do this for me. No, once work is done, work is supposed to be done. And they really do, they respect that work-life balance. And I do think we need to have that respect, but it is a tricky situation. And like Lixa said, okay, the employee cannot be contacted to come in when they're off, but what if the boss just decides, you know what, this is not a team player. I need someone who's going to be more assertive and saying, I'm going to cover Eric's shift when he's not coming in, or whatever. I'm going to go to the happy hour. What if it becomes a thing where the boss thinks, you know what, this person doesn't go to the happy hour because he doesn't like us, so he's not our friend, or she doesn't get along with us, she doesn't fit in here. So it could be a matter of them maybe in their heads respecting the person's time and saying, this is their time off, I'm going to respect that, but still thinking that, why aren't they volunteering to do some of these things? Why aren't they taking the initiative to be more involved in a company culture like everyone else is?
Right. Yeah.
So
it's definitely something that I think needs to be acknowledged and looked into, so we can have more of a work-life balance and understand what's expected of you going into essentially a contract when you sign on the job to work for a company or get hired.
But that's the problem though. In New York, it's not really that, right? We think of it that way, and we think of it as a contract, and we have obligations, they have obligations, but at will employment means it's not really a contract in the way that we think of it as being one, right? Because they can basically do what they want with respect to your job. They can say, we don't want you anymore. You don't have any real protections. Now, obviously there are areas where we have protections, like we have unions and we do have certain laws, but I don't think in America as a whole, they're strong enough. I don't think the worker gets respected enough in America. I want to see more paid time off guaranteed, like we have in other countries, especially like you said in Europe, more vacation time guaranteed, because that just makes for a more productive workplace, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and makes for a happier, worker, makes for a better society. They have to have that work-life balance. It's funny, out here in Japan, there are actually some pretty good labor laws. It's just most people aren't aware of them, even though a lot of employers aren't aware of them, and they do things more traditionally where it's like, okay, well, you're on call anytime we want you, or you have to do this and that. But labor law actually says, no, you don't. And, they have pretty good vacation type of time. It starts off with you start off with 10 days a year, but then over the next couple of years, it's up to 20 you can get, and then that can roll over to the max of 40 if you don't use it. And what was happening is that workers were feeling so much pressure to not use their paid time off, because the workplace culture here would say that, if you took the time off, even though it's your paid time off, you went out, took a week off, then you're kind of guilted into feeling like you left extra work for your coworkers so they wouldn't take it. And so about 4 years ago, because this is such an issue and the stress and all this is such an issue, there's actually a term for dying at your desk for work in Japanese. The government issued a law that stated that the companies will be fined if workers don't take a minimum number of paid time off per year. So that's, yes.
Workers will be fined for
not the workers, the company.
Oh, the company will be fined if the workers didn't take their paid time off?
Right. Because the workers not taking the paid time off was seen as even though it might have been unsaid and it could have been said, it's kind of a power harassment thing.
Like coerced by the company.
Right. Just because of the culture, and it's, and so the government stepped in. It's like, look, they don't take it, your company's going to be fined.
Wow. That's interesting. I do remember many years ago when I was working at a law firm, the culture was kind of like that, where especially if you were a newer lawyer starting out, you weren't expected to leave the premises without going up to all the lawyers who were still there, especially with the ones who had more time in than you, and offering to help them on what they were doing. And a couple of times when I first I got there, I don't think I ever really adjusted my behavior, but it was called out because I was like a shock to the people. I would do my work and I would leave. And no one instructed me, like we were saying earlier. That wasn't conveyed to me when I began the job that, okay, after you finish your work, you got to help the other lawyers. No one said that to me. That wasn't part of the deal. It was,
Right.
I was supposed to be an associate attorney like everyone else there was. So I had the same title as everyone else. They had more time in, sure, but we had the same job. And so my perspective was I'm assigned my work, I do my work, and then I finish. You know, it was maybe 6:30 at night, 7 o'clock at night, whatever. It wasn't like I was leaving at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was still working hard, but there were other attorneys sometimes who were still working later, and maybe they started later, whatever the case may be. But sometimes they were later. I would just leave when I finished. My perspective was, look, we're on the same level. They're not asking me for help. And in fact, I probably need it more than they do because I'm new here, but we all have our caseload and we all do our thing. And I wasn't against helping other attorneys, but I didn't feel like I had to follow this unwritten rule because of the workplace culture that I could never leave. How dare I leave without asking all these other senior attorneys for help? And, you know, you never leave before a senior attorney. It'd be like silly. To me, that was like a silly social convention at the workplace, you know, culture, or part of the workplace culture. Same thing about the partner of the firm. When it was like the boss of the firm, when he's in, no attorney who was an associate wanted to leave if the boss was in. And I was like, this is so silly to me, because you know they're going to be afraid that like the boss is going to think that they don't do enough work or work hard enough. I'm like, my work speaks for itself, and I was never told I had to be here at a certain time. I don't think the boss expects me to sit here just because he's here. I don't think that's the case. But that was the culture of the other attorneys in the office.
It's funny you mention that, because that is very common in Japan as well, where workers, just regular office workers, won't leave until the manager leaves. Even if it's their time, even if the workday is up, their time to go home, let's say it was, for example, say it was 5 o'clock. If the manager in the office is still there till 6, 7, 8 o'clock, they won't leave. Even if they have nothing to do, they'll just sit there at their desk. And that's kind of a social convention in Japan, and it's kind of seemed as you're dedicated because it's like, oh, well, you stayed as long. It's kind of dedication, and so that's one thing that often Japanese workers and foreign workers, there's this difference, because a foreign worker, especially someone coming from the States or from Europe, you know, at 5 o'clock, they're out of there, and you know, it's like, why are you leaving? We're still supposed to be here. Like, no, work is done. We have nothing to do either. Like, why are you still sitting here?
Right.
Yeah, it's a social.
Yeah, if the work is done, I think you should leave, especially if you're beyond the time that you said you were supposed to be there or whatever. I do think that sometimes there's a danger when we pay people just for the time, that they're just concerned about the time and not the work. And so, like you said, 5 o'clock, they're out of there. Well, what if there is extra work, but they're not going to do it because now I'm off. This is my time, not your time.
Right.
To me, that sometimes can be too rigid. I mean, I think overall in American workplace culture, we overemphasize that aspect of it. Even when you're getting to work on time, how dare you be 2 minutes late? Oh my God. Meanwhile, you probably didn't have anything to do at 9 o'clock or for those 2 minutes, whatever. Or maybe you had to go to the bathroom. Like, you can't go to the bathroom now. Like, you're talking 2 minutes here. Like, come on. I do think there has been an overemphasis on 9 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever the hours are, versus the work that you're doing. Because I would rather have someone who can do great work in a small amount of time than not care about the work that they're doing, but will always be there at their desk all day. That doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, it's a kind of an interesting thing. And I think it's something that's going to keep coming up a lot, because as you said, things are changing with the addition of like gig economy things and the addition of remote work, working on your own and whatnot. So people are going to be questioning these things and challenging some of these things more and more.
Especially if they had a lemonade stand as a kid.
Yeah, sure.
They'll be more entrepreneurial, independent minded. I don't need you. I can go out on the street and sell my own stuff. I
agree with Lixa. Lixa said they need to employ more staff if there's work left. That's poor management and planning by the employer. I agree. It could also be, I think that the other part of that, it could be that the worker is not working in an efficient manner. If if they had plenty of time and there's still left over, there's two possibilities. Either there was too much and the management didn't plan, or that worker just wasn't
Yeah, but it's situational. I mean, you could have a slow day when really nothing is happening. You're pacing it out perfectly, right? You know exactly what you're assigned, and you say, I'm going to finish it just on time. This is going to be great. And then you get 6 phone calls from different clients or different people or bosses, supervisors, whatever the case is. I mean, just stuff comes up. And maybe it needs to be handled that day. Maybe it doesn't. I mean, most things actually don't need to be handled as soon as we think that they do. I think we sometimes as people have this tendency to think everything needs to be done now. Yeah, a lot can be put off, but there are things that are urgent that do need to be handled, especially when you're dealing with clients and other people. You know, you're serving people. Things come up. And so sometimes you'll have slow days, sometimes you'll have busy days. That's just how it is. I think on average, you want to see it work out where, okay, this is a job that's generally supposed to be between this time period and this, you know, this time and this time. Then you want it to work out where, you know, the workload is appropriate for that time. But you can't count on that always being the case. Again, depending on the job, you may be sometimes busier than other times. Even it could be seasonal too. What if you're, you know, in taxes, for example, tax season is the busiest, and then the rest of the year, maybe not so much. You know, it just depends on what you're doing.
I think that what needs to be respected is the employee's time and the business's time, and that needs to have that balance there.
Absolutely, it's all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
And that could be a segue into the next topic. I know we talked about lawyers and law firms. Well, we wanted to talk about the controversy, I guess, that's happening now over people applying to become lawyers, attorneys. After they pass law school, they pass the bar even, they have to go through what's called character and fitness to apply to the bar, to practice law, to get licensed to practice law. And in New York, they ask applicants not only to disclose criminal convictions that people might have had as an adult, but they want you to disclose all arrests and also juvenile offenses that you might have committed or been convicted of. And this is really the only profession where they ask such questions. Some people say it's even illegal because there's been a move to ban the box, you know, not ask about that kind of stuff when you apply for a job. Lawyers, though, have a unique job. It's a unique profession. You're talking about the law, right? So it may be more relevant to ask someone that, but there are calls now to move away from that and say, it's one thing to ask about criminal convictions as an adult. Okay, fine. But we're talking about what you might have done as a kid, or if you've been arrested but not convicted. To some, that's going a little bit too far.
Right. And I can see, you know, I can see both sides of it as well. Because of the position that lawyers are in, like you are, you know, you're taking on a responsibility to a client, you know, to do certain things. I can understand why you might want to ask to kind of make sure you're getting a certain caliber of people. But it doesn't, it could potentially exclude people who have done things like change their life, turn their lives around, or might have just fallen into something unfortunate, or, you know, something in that regard.
Right. Well, why don't we even think about the discriminatory or potentially discriminatory effect of this? I mean, we've talked about marijuana convictions, for example. We've talked about how the law oftentimes disproportionately affects people of color. Well, this obviously spills directly into this, you know, becoming a lawyer. If you're much more likely to have a record, you're less likely to become a lawyer. And in fact, a study showed that for every applicant who applied for character and fitness, who disclosed such a prior conviction or arrest or issue with their record, there were 15 applicants who didn't even complete the application. So it's really encouraging people, I guess, not to even go through with it, because once you disclose everything, the board can decide to let you in. They don't, it doesn't mean just because you have a conviction on your record or an arrest on your record, you can never be a lawyer, but they have to make that determination. And this is disincentivizing people from even applying to become a lawyer.
Right. So after 3 years of law school and tuition and everything, 15 out of those people are like, yeah, okay, I think I'm going to pass on that.
Yeah. For every one person who discloses an issue with their record, there are 15 who say, I'm not even going to submit this application.
That, like, what do you do then? Like, what,
Right. And why did you go to law school? I mean, you would think they would have looked into this first.
Right. You would think that, yeah.
But
now, let me ask
to be fair, though, I just want to say it could be that they went to law school let's say they took the bar in New York and then now they're looking into becoming a lawyer in New York. Maybe they didn't realize New York had this requirement. Other states don't have the same requirement. So you can go to law school and then take the bar in different states and become licensed in different areas. So they could still maybe become lawyers in other states.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, if it was the same in other states or if this was a New York thing. So it doesn't bar them from being a lawyer everywhere. Just it's a requirement in New York and maybe a few other places then.
Yeah, I can't really speak to the other states. I'm quite sure that not every state does it the way New York does it.
So maybe several people, maybe those 15 people are like, you know what, I'm gonna go practice law somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think if other states get around it, or not get around it, or don't do it, and it's, their system's working fine, then it doesn't seem like it's that much of a requirement for New York State to do it.
See if we can pull some data on what other states are doing.
Yeah, I think Lix is asking the same thing. Shouldn't that have been told the first day of law school? You would think, but again, it could also be, what if someone did law school in a different state, in a state that didn't have it? And
right, or it doesn't really matter where you go to law school, because all law schools pretty much teach the same law, teach the same stuff. If you go to law school in New York, they're not teaching about New York law. They're teaching the same curriculum basically everywhere. It's when you study for the bar in New York, that's when you really start getting into New York law. So you can go to law school in Harvard, you can go to law school anywhere, any law school in the country, and then study for the bar in any state. In fact, most people who go to Harvard and go to these top law schools want to practice in New York because that's where the best paying jobs are.
Right. So that could be, I don't think it would be disclosed necessarily that, okay, well, in New York, this is a requirement. So that's a
yeah. And also, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone. I just, thinking back to like my first day of law school, I don't think there was an expectation that many people in that class were ex-cons. Like it wouldn't be something that people would even think of. Like, okay, students, welcome to law school. Just so you know, all y'all who've been to prison are gonna have a hard time at the end of the tunnel. Like, you know what I mean? Like that wouldn't even really be something that people would be thinking about.
Right. So,
and like I said, being a lawyer is a unique job. It's not just the dealing with clients aspect of it. It's that you're an officer of the court and you're expected to uphold the law. That's really what the job is. You take an oath on the Constitution and all that kind of stuff. So if you have a history of arguably not respecting the law, are you suitable to be a lawyer? Maybe you should be something else.
That's, like I said, I can see that side of it. Again, there's also the side, like you said, the potential discrimination aspects of it, the fact that other states don't find it necessary. So I can kind of see why someone would ask that, because I've said often, things like lawyers, like politicians, like policemen, like you're in positions of public responsibility, so you should be held to a higher standard. So I get that as well, but again, like you said, there could be other circumstances.
Right. Now, some people argue that if they've been through the system themselves, they have a unique perspective that cannot be taught in school.
That's I think there's something to that as well. For some reason I recall, if I'm not mistaken, like back in wasn't it, I think the 80s is when they stopped doing a lot of college in giving free college to prisoners in prison. I just think wasn't there like stories of like
80s.
Wasn't it the
much more recent, wasn't it?
Really? I don't know. Was it the 90s when they stopped giving college to prisoners? But a lot were studying law. I think some were trying to overturn their convictions, and some were, being in the system, wanting to learn more about it, or whatnot.
That was in Jadakiss' song "Why," right? You talked about degrees in jail.
Yeah, when was that? That was 2000s.
That was 2004. That song.
Why do you know the exact year of that song?
For a number of reasons. Number one, I'm good with that kind of stuff. I'm good with dates like that. I remember that particular project. I remember that song, Why.
I
And
remember.
I
It was
remember the
big.
remix, Why. And
Wasn't Common was on the remix.
Common was on the remix, and he gave Obama a shout out in his verse. And
Yep.
that's why I remember it was really 2004, because that was after the Democratic Convention in 04, when Obama gave the speech for John Kerry. And that's when people started talking about him possibly becoming a presidential candidate. But it seemed so unlikely at that point, given our history. We were talking about discrimination a second ago. It just didn't seem like something that could realistically happen until we
Right.
saw it. It was like, we'll see it when we believe it. So when he said, why don't we impeach Bush and elect Obama, to me, that resonated. I was like, wow, he really thinks Obama has a shot. But that was like really like the first time that I heard someone say Obama should run for president, basically. Obama should be the president.
Right.
But that was coming out of that convention speech in 04. And it happened so quickly because he became the next nominee and won in 08. But
Right.
as recently as 04, it seemed like such a long shot thing.
Yeah, and 08 it was a long shot thing, but
Right.
yeah, I remember the verse. I just didn't, the date.
In 2000, believe it or not, Obama went to the Al Gore convention and wasn't even allowed in. He tried to get onto the floor, and I guess he you know what it was? He ran for Congress in 2000 and lost, but he was a state senator already, and so he tried saying, I'm an Illinois state senator. They were like, we don't know who you are. Maybe they didn't like him because he was challenging a Democratic incumbent, whatever. But he wasn't even allowed at the convention or on the floor in 2000. 4 years later, he gives a keynote address. 4 years after that, he becomes president. So that's his trajectory.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I remember that song. That was dope. Still kind of a side note on that. Just kind of thinking about it. Common on the remix is kind of odd for a Jadakiss song.
it
you would
is.
think that matchup.
It is, but here's the thing. A few points on that. Okay, now we're getting into a whole big hip hop discussion. Number one, this was Jadakiss delving into conscious rap, so to speak. So this is really the
Right.
first song Jadakiss put out that wasn't just mixtapey, drop a 16, do my street stuff. It was him doing a real song, and he had Anthony Hamilton on the chorus, and it was like, oh wow. The knock on Jada was he was a great rapper, but he couldn't make songs. This really dispelled that, at least when it came to this particular song, because everyone was like, wow, this is a great song from Jadakiss. We knew he could rap. We didn't think he could do that. People were putting him in the cannabis category, kind of. But now they're like, okay, here's a real song from the guy. And like I said, it was conscious. So when he went to do the remix, Common was perfect for it because it was that lane. This was also, again, 2004, College Dropout just came out that year. Kanye talked about I Bridge the Gap, right? Ali on a song with Jay-Z, that kind of thing. So Jadakiss, I think, was following in that footstep. Also, who produced the Y remix? Elite, who was also a producer for Q&5, Tone Deaf in it. So he was doing the underground stuff also. So I think all those ingredients kind of made that remix happen. And I still love that remix to this day. Nas is on there, Common is on there, Styles is on there. I think they all deliver.
Yeah. Good song.
Now I'm Google. See, you got me Googling all these things.
Lixa says California is still offering college courses in prison. I think it's good.
It varies. It varies.
Yeah,
right?
it depends. I don't think it's nationwide. I don't think it's as big as it might have been, but I think it's necessary. It's a good.
In 2014, apparently, there was a state law allowing community colleges in California to offer in-person courses in prison.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I mean, I guess this could be our poll question of the week. We could ask people if they think that people applying to be lawyers should have to disclose all this or not. I mean,
okay, yeah.
It's one thing if you're talking about convictions as an adult, but just arrests. I mean, it doesn't mean you're guilty just because you were arrested. And we know, again, poor people of color, much more likely to be arrested just because of how policing is set up in America, just because of how the system works in this country. Is that really fair? I mean, is that keeping people away from the legal profession who really would enrich the profession just because maybe they were unfairly arrested? Maybe they have a lot of unfair arrests on their record, but they were never convicted of anything. Should we be judging people? And again, this is the legal profession. We're taught we're all innocent until proven guilty. It's part of the Constitution, right? So should we be judging people based on an arrest, but there was no conviction.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's yeah. So go ahead, set that up. Set that poll up.
All right, well, let's see if I can wing this then. The poll question, take two. You got me all right. I'm all off. Let me focus here. All right. The poll question of the week is, do you think New York should continue to ask aspiring lawyers to disclose arrests and juvenile offenses as opposed to only criminal convictions as adults?
That's a long one, but that's a good.
I think it's within the 15 seconds though.
Yeah, I think you're good. I think you're good. I think you're good. I have to rephrase that for the shorts just to because there might not be enough space for the whole thing. I have to find a way to.
Yeah, when it goes on my Instagram poll, I don't have the writing in there. I just have the yes, no, so people can vote on it because I've got to fit it all on the screen.
Right.
So your text gets preempted.
But it's a good question. I think it's an interesting question. We'll see what it is. And one thing with the polls, and speaking of polls, we go over the poll that we did last week. And I just will say one thing with the polls, we've been putting them up on YouTube and the YouTube Shorts. If you guys aren't subscribed to the YouTube channel, go do that. But sometimes people get the questions and they'll think they're a little silly because of what we're asking, not knowing that these are actual real things, like the poll that we had last week, which was, should the whipped cream canisters be, banned for sale to people under the age of 21? And so
I could see that being funny to someone who doesn't see the context, who doesn't know that was just a law that everyone's talking about, especially this part of New York, right? It originated from our district here in Queens. So if someone doesn't have any of that context and they just get the question and they don't even know why it's a law, which maybe speaks to the law itself, I don't know, maybe it says something, but if they don't know why or what's going on with this, it does seem weird. It would be like us asking, should children not be allowed to have green shoelaces? What are you talking about?
Yeah. And so it's funny, but it does kind of prompt a few things. Like one of the comments was that, what is this even about? What are you talking about? And it was interesting that one or two people actually picked up on it. Someone put in there, they're talking about whippets. Someone put in there talking about there's nitrous in the can and people are getting high off of it. So, but yeah, out of context, sometimes people can be like, well, what are you talking about?
Right.
So,
why is this even a question?
Right. This doesn't make any sense. Of course not. But again, it does lend to a discussion to figure out, again, the nuance of certain things.
But does that speak to the law itself? I mean, if that's someone's visceral reaction to a measure in a vacuum, does that say something about the law? I mean, last week we talked about the idea of 21 does seem extreme. I mean, maybe there's a good reason for it, but you can go to war, but you can't buy a whipped cream charger.
I would imagine they chose 21 because it's the legal age for other so-called intoxicants. So alcohol, tobacco.
It's not 21. Tobacco?
In some places, isn't it?
18.
Is it 18 in New York? I think, I mean, that's why I assume that they chose 21. It's kind of the, what they look at. But I didn't really get any answers on the poll. It was just more commentary. Some people understanding where it was from, a few not.
You're right. Hold on a second. I stand corrected. It was in New York. It was raised from 18 to 21 in 2019. See, look at this. I'm Googling all kinds of stuff tonight.
Lixa says that marijuana is also 21.
Marijuana is 21, sure.
So I assume that's why they chose 21 for that. That
just proved, by the way, I don't buy tobacco because I probably would have known that if I bought tobacco. I would have seen the signs everywhere I went, right? 21, I thought it was 8. It was always 18 my whole life.
Yeah, nah, I haven't bought any of those things.
So like I said earlier, I mean, I'm sure there is a good reason for it being 21, but certain people think it sounds extreme or, too high, too prohibitive. I don't know. My poll result, I had just asked about the law as it was. Do you think that people in New York should not be allowed to buy whipped cream chargers who are under 21? It was 29% who agreed with the law and 71% who disagreed.
Okay. Now, and again, the question would be, do they understand the context?
Exactly. We're just asking this question in a vacuum. Now, of course, some of the people did watch or listen to Nuance.
Right.
Some people might not have. Some people might have just seen the short on YouTube or the Instagram story or what have you. But it's still a worthwhile question, I think, to pose, even getting people's opinions who might not have the background. Just what is your thought? On first blush, do you think this is a good idea or not? Now, we shouldn't make our decisions based on first impressions, but it does give us some useful information, I think, as to how people react to something. What does that tell you about how someone reacts to hearing something for the first time?
Right. So,
but I do think that our senator and assemblywoman have the community's interest at mind. I do think that these whippets and the paraphernalia from them have been a big problem. And I saw piles of them myself, and people would send me pictures a lot. So it is something that needed to be addressed. And I'm glad that they did address it. I do commend them for doing it. I really do think that their heart is in the right place and they're trying to do something about the problem. And maybe this will make a difference in a positive way.
Yeah. And again, it was even within the context of the law and the language of the law itself, there was some confusion. So maybe there's just something there's room for improvement on the law and how it's applied. Because you did send me a picture of what was it? Maybe it was a store or something that just said that you can't buy whipped cream under the age of 21.
Right. That was actually a store in Howard Beach. They put a sign up. Now, I don't know if they just misinterpreted the law themselves or they're just trying to be careful. I mean, because I can see them saying something like, hey, listen, I know that the law doesn't outright prohibit us from selling the ready whip canisters and such, but there's already a ban on selling these cartridges, and it's been debated as to how far it goes or how far it should go. I don't want someone to come back and sue us. What if we sell this and some kid gets high off of it and something happens and the parents come back and sue us? You know what I mean? Now there's a law, maybe not against this in particular, but against this type of behavior, and they don't want to get swept into it. So I can see them just being overly cautious. But there were some who thought that it was just simply a misunderstanding of the law itself.
Right. And one of the comments that we did get was someone said, this won't stop anyone from doing whippets. Amazon and eBay still exist, and so do the little bodegas. If a kid is dumb enough to do a whole canister in one go, he deserves not waking up. That line is unnecessary. But the Amazon and the eBay question is very valid. It
is a very valid one, and it opens up a whole can of worms when it comes to internet law, right? Because the law says any entity doing business in the state of New York cannot sell these devices. Well,
right.
Is Amazon doing business in the state of New York? I mean, yes, it's certainly availing itself to New York, as any website is. And this is always really the fundamental question when you get into internet law, because the law predates the internet, right? So all these concepts we have legally really are hard to fit into our changing society. I mean, our new, the new world that we're in. So, it was easy to see when it was just a store and you had to go to a store to buy something, where that store is doing business. Where is it located? It's very common question. Now it's like, okay, is every website doing business everywhere? To some degree, yes. They might not be headquartered in New York, but they're availing themselves to New York. And then you start getting into questions of the Commerce Clause, for example. I mean, to what extent is this the federal government's responsibility? Because if it's interstate commerce, the Congress says that's up to the federal government, not the states. And how can you expect a site like Amazon or eBay to know every state's laws when it comes to all of their types of products? And what if it's not even a state law? What if it's a city law, municipal law, county? You have law at the local level also.
What if they're in another
unrealistic at that point?
What if they're in What if they're in another country? It could be
exactly.
Now that the only thing in that regard, like we've had mail order for over 100 years, and so I think.
But the test was always, Jay, the legal test was always, do they purposely avail themselves to that jurisdiction? So, for example, if it was mail order, are they advertising there?
Right.
Do they commonly send products there, or are they never involved there at all?
Right. And that does make some sort of sense. Like if you're specifically targeting, okay, like you're sending out mailers to New York, or you're putting up ads in New York. Okay, now you are actively doing it. But let's say you found a catalog in Maryland, and you went back home to New York and decided to order from it. What's the situation in that regard?
Right.
So, yeah, you know, it's the internet can make that a little bit more complicated. Plus, even without the internet, though, if the law doesn't exist in New Jersey, they can just hop on the train, go over the bridge, pick up some canisters, and go back. So,
Like how they bring guns into New York, which is why I said that's a federal issue as well. It's by definition an interstate issue when you're seeing guns brought across state lines, and it's what happens, right? It's the path of least resistance. It's easy to buy them here,
Right.
and buy them here, and bring them where I got to bring them. You know, that's
right,
how
right.
this all works. So I got a message
Interesting.
asking where I post my polls. My polls get posted on Instagram. So it's instagram.com/ScalaVision, because for whatever reason, Facebook doesn't allow me to post my stories as polls. I can do a separate poll. I think like if I put like a picture up, I can do a poll. So I can do like a workaround, but the videos that I have, Facebook won't recognize. So I can't
Right.
post them directly to Facebook as videos. And I can do Instagram, and then I can share it from Instagram to Facebook. But then when it gets to Facebook, the poll functionality doesn't work on it. So
And it used to.
it used to, but now for whatever reason, it doesn't. So,
Right. Also-
so for it to work, I would need to have it posted directly to Facebook. But like I said, Facebook doesn't recognize for whatever reason my videos. Maybe
Right.
it's an Apple Android conversion issue. I don't know what the deal is with that. But
Right.
Instagram.com/ScalaVision is where the polls are posted on my page.
Right. And they're also on YouTube, on the YouTube
Shorts.
channel. Just look up Nuance with Mike Scala and Jay Carter, and you can subscribe there. The polls are there. Also, the recordings of the discussions are there. Even break these things down. You know what we forgot to do? We forgot to get from PJ. We forgot to get
The bottom line.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
hard
well.
to give a bottom line though when it was just him talking about what he's doing. I mean, usually the bottom line is like a summary of the entire discussion.
Right. So
We'll give it to you, Jay. What is the bottom line?
the bottom line is that, in reference to the discussion we had earlier, the bottom line is that employers and employees need to respect each other's time and the relationship that they get into. So I think it is a relationship, because without one, the other doesn't really work. So respect each other's time and that work-life balance, and put in effort for your employer when you're on the clock, and employer respect that people have life outside of their work.
Yeah, I agree completely. That creates a healthier economy. It creates a healthier population, a healthier country, and a stronger country. Let's face it, once this is respected.
Absolutely. And a stronger country can help benefit everyone.
Absolutely. So there you go. The bottom line. I like it. And
All right.
we should mention we're on podcast form, wherever podcasts can be heard. So Spotify, Apple, so on and so forth. Your favorite podcast spot, go pick it up.
Yeah, subscribe there as well.
All right.
Appreciate everybody joining us. As always, it's always a wonderful time. I think we have some good conversations here.
Yeah,
And learn a lot.
that's right. I'm learning too, and I'm Googling things as we talk because all these questions come up. Okay, I'm prepared to just discuss this point, but what about that? Oh, but there's this, but there could be this. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, that is interesting. Let me find out. Let me look into this,
Which is the entire point.
Yes.
And if we do more of that, we won't have so much contention between different factions and groups, because there is some common ground. There are some things you don't have to be so visceral about, and to allow those other possibilities into your thought process, is a good thing. Makes you a little bit more well-rounded.
Yes. Expand the mind. Do more Googling. Put that on a t-shirt. Do more Googling.
Yeah. Don't forget our Googleable t-shirts.
That's right. Nuance with Mike Scala and Jay Carter is Googleable. Good word.
Indeed.
Thank you all for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.